everyone, good evening. You're watching The Money Show on ET Now. I'm Mubina Kapasi. We often say that Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth. In fact, in Diwali, we revere goddess Lakshmi so that she brings in more harmony and more prosperity in our homes. But still, despite Lakshmi being the goddess of wealth and being a woman, in India, a lot of women don't take charge of their finances. And hence here I am at the offices of Lxme, not the goddess, but the financial planning firm dedicated to women. And I have with me the mastermind behind this firm, Ms.Priti Rathi Gupta. Priti, thank you so much for joining us on The Money Show. Like I said, right, as the word is eponymous, Lakshmi means the goddess of wealth, but still we do not have many women participating or sort of taking charge of their finances. What do you think is holding them back in the first place?
So I think, first of all, thank you for having me on this show. And I love the fact that, you're taking women on to The Money Show. And I think that should become a game changer. The reason Lxme was really set up was, of course, like you said, that women for some reason were taking charge of their careers, their homes, their families, everything. But when it came to money, it was suddenly something that they didn't want to talk about. We did a lot of research into why that was happening because it was mind-boggling. And we came across largely these three reasons. One, I think there's a deep ingrained orientation in our society that men manage money and men are good with money. Second, women have always been risk averse, and I think typically the world of investments, which is moving, anything that is to move away, if you have to move away from banking or putting your money into the bank, was considered to be very, very risky. Yeah. And that brings me to the final, the third reason, which is that because there was not enough information in a very, very relatable manner shared by a lot of the financial advisors, it was an area that was very intimidating for women. Lack of knowledge, information, and therefore the fear. So these were primarily the reasons, or these are the reasons that women don't step into the field of saying, let me take charge of my money.
So, and we always say it is important for a woman to be financially independent, regardless of how well off your husband is or your father is. In fact, you have a very apt saying right here behind me: a man is not a financial plan, right? Sure. So again, if you could educate our women viewers out there as to why it's important, that they have their independent finances, or what we say, Stri Dhan, set aside for themselves.
So it's interesting you mentioned Stri Dhan. So I think typically our age-old customs had a lot of logic to them. The reason for Stri Dhan was that the woman had a lot of, she could kind of take bold steps in her life or stand up for her values or whatever she believed in, because at the back of her mind she had wealth, which was Stri Dhan, and which was not to be touched upon by anybody else. It was her wealth alone. And I think somewhere along the line we kind of never took it forward. And today I think women really, given the dynamics, the way lives now are, there's no predictability to whether it is marriages, whether it is to life, whether it is to your career, whether it is to your job. It is important that you take control of your own money, because that's what defines your future. Today, real power is in money. And I think if you're not managing that, then whether it is your decisions regarding your life, your career, anything at all, is very dependent on other people. Yeah. And I think to me that is the worst place for a woman to be in today, to be financially dependent and also not to have the financial freedom to take her own decisions.
Okay, yeah, well, money, like it or not, but it is an important factor of sort of giving you that power to make your own decisions without having to worry about, ancillary stuff. Well, like they say, the only way to not worry about money is to have a lot of it. But now that we've convinced, I hope we've convinced a lot of our women viewers out there on why they need to start their financial plan. Let's start off then from step one. Let's say that I have just entered the workforce, or I've just graduated from college, or for that matter, even if I'm a student right now. What should be step one when I want to kickstart my, wealth creation journey or my portfolio, planning journey?
So the step one is not to procrastinate that decision. Is to say, I own the decision to manage my own money and own my own future. I think that has to be pretty much like a resolve, because if you don't do that, then you are delegating that to, typically I've seen people who've just started their careers. The money comes into the bank, and then either it stays in the bank, or the decision is the father, brother, husband, sometimes even a distant relative who's closely related to the financial world will take decision on your behalf. And I think it's important to understand that when it's your money, it's going to meet your goals. And while, our relatives, father, brother may take that decision in good faith, but it is not your goal that they may actually know about or understand. So I think that's the first step is to say, yes, I take ownership of that. The second bit is to really start looking at your goals. I think one of the things that we don't do is, and which is true for all areas of life when you're really young or you're just beginning a journey, is to say that what is it that I aim to do 2 years down the line, 6 months down the line, 5 years, 10 years. And those are the goals that you should clearly define for yourself. And then say, okay, now what kind of money do I need to, fulfill these goals? Based on that, take decisions. The safest decision really to take is to leave your money in the bank or put it in a fixed deposit, which we've been traditionally doing. But then the first step...
Or buying gold, I suppose, as well?
Well, I think increasingly and luckily so, I think a lot of the younger generation is really not tilting towards buying gold. But to really say that if I keep my money in the fixed deposit, will I be able to achieve these goals? So I think that sets your mind thinking. What I've always advised women is that no matter what, before you begin your journey, make sure that you have an emergency fund created for yourself. And that is typically 6 months of your expenses or even your salary, if you can be a little ambitious about it. Keep that aside, and keep that aside where you can easily access it, which is typically, that is good enough to keep in the banks if you don't know where else to put it, or something like a liquid fund where you can, get the money on the second day when you need it. I think that is the first step. And the second is, which the youngsters hate listening about, is to think of your retirement fund, because that's so far away that you don't want to think about
what the youngsters call FOMO, right? Or any other abbreviation, which frankly
because I think not just youngsters today, the way we live is, we are here today, let's live to the fullest, which
instant
is fair
gratification
enough, which is fair enough. I mean, every decision that you take about your money should rightly be about a brighter future, but not dulling your today. That's very important. So I think look at your retirement fund and say, okay, what is the kind of money that I will need once I, say I want to stop working when I'm 50 years old. What do I want to do post that? Where do I want to live? What kind of money should I have? Once you look at that, once you have your emergency fund, while you're building your emergency fund, look at options of where you think your money will grow to meet your goals. And do a little bit of, reading on what are the different asset classes. When you just begin, it's very hard to, kind of reach out to a financial advisor, and which was actually the reason that Lakshmi was set up. It enables you to, digitally have access to a lot of learning, lot of articles about how to manage money, how to meet your goals. For example, one of our first aspirations when we start working is, I want to travel. 8 months down the line, a year after, I want to travel to this exotic location. Why not plan that from now? So Lakshmi has a lot of articles around it. And also the ability to really just digitally put in your money into, invest it according to your goals.
Okay, but like you said, right, that emergency fund and retirement fund, and both of them, of course, for a lot of our young viewers may be sounding terribly boring, but I think it's interesting to know that, again, in your Instagram page, I'm taking a lot of inspiration. In fact, that'll come for you on your screens as well. But yes, there is a particular post that says, what are your rich dreams? So like you mentioned, financial planning is not just for retirement and for your emergency fund, but it's also to essentially help you achieve your let's say shorter term goals. You want that fancy home theater system, though I don't know how many women may want that, but you want an exotic vacation somewhere abroad in Europe, or you want to go backpacking. I don't see why financial planning will not help you achieve that. But now that we know what we want to save for, basically you've listed down what you want to achieve, what you want to save for, and invest for. The question now comes is, how do you pick the instrument? Because the world of finance has a lot of jargons, and I think that's the reason why, like you mentioned, women prefer to stay away from that. So there's equity, there's debt, there's hybrid, there's PPF and stuff like that. There's a whole variety of them. So how should you decide what's right for you, or should you then go and consult an independent financial advisor or Lakshmi's app or anything like that?
Well, like I said, I think it's always good to take advice. Take advice from a financial advisor or a platform like Lakshmi, which will tell you just the basics of different asset classes. And one of the key things that you need to understand is that managing your money is essentially about, one, how do you become smart about saving more money? So which will bring you to the point of saying, okay, if I am in the tax bracket, how do I save my taxes? Once you've saved that money, then you say, okay, let me think about growing that money. And how do I look at growing my money? I think one of the key things and that's the simplest, really, one of the simplest pillars to deciding where to put your money is something called inflation. And which is, in simple words, saying, how is your cost of living going to increase, or how is the value of your money going to actually decrease year on year. Once you pay attention to that, so say inflation is 5% is what the government figures are released, but you need to take into account what are you spending on.
So with that, I think to conclude our conversation, Preeti, the key takeaways are: start right now. You are never too early, you're never too old, essentially, to start investing. There's no minimum as well. I mean, if you have 500 rupees, you can start an SIP, because I think an SIP can be started with even 500 rupees. Emergency funds for a short term, ensure that you have that in place. And of course, very important that women take their financial decisions on their own. Don't leave it to the man of the house, because once again, let us reiterate, a man is not a financial plan. Preeti, thanks so much for joining us on this very interesting conversation on The Money Show.
Thank you.